in there to see what came of it. Sure enough, events began playing into my hands, not least when Sebastian earned himself another drive-through for hitting Jensen at the chicane 4 minutes straight. Fernando then fell off all on his own. That left me in P3 behind Robert Kubica, who then obliged by overshooting his pit stop as he fiddled with the settings on the way down pit lane. While Lewis's win was very impressive, second place was an excellent result for me, and though it cost me the championship lead, I was still just 3 points behind the McLaren man. Red Bull Racing were now a point ahead of McLaren in the Constructors' Stakes as well, so there was everything to play for. One more log on the fire. At Monza, we arrived with my name second in the Drivers' Championship with 179 points alongside it. Vettel's, meanwhile, was 28. But Monza brought further evidence that Marco was calling the shots. He informed us that if I was 28 points clear of Sebastian in the title chase after Monza, then the team's weight would be thrown directly behind me. That was another weekend when it felt as though the pendulum had swung the wrong way. I had a water leak and an airbox fire in free practice, and by the time qualifying began, I still hadn't tried the option tyre. Long story short, no Red Bull on the front row for the first time in a year, and a Ferrari there in the shape of Fernando Alonso for the first time in 22 months. My start was average, but I got done by Nico Rosberg, was out of shape at the first chicane, and was murdered by a whole group of guys and down to P9 before I knew it. I got stuck behind a mobile chicane called Hulkenberg, who cut the first real chicane deliberately on 2 separate occasions, as that was the only way he was able to stay ahead of me. And apparently the team's approaches to race director Charlie Whiting about the German's erratic behaviour didn't carry any weight. When we left Monza, the gap between us had narrowed to 24 points, but I was back on top of the table, while Sebastian had slipped to 5th. Another good result in unlikely circumstances came about in Singapore, which had never been a happy hunting ground for me. I figured I had to improve the way I was getting through that twisty final sector, but in qualifying, ironically, it proved to be my best, and I ended up on the 3rd row. At the start, I was boxed in behind Jensen's McLaren, but there was a very early safety car for Luzzi's damaged Force India. I confessed to being a bit nonplussed when the team called me in to change tyres. That meant I would have a long stint on Bridgestone's medium compound, but it turned out to be an inspired decision. I cleared Kamui Kobayashi, who was doing some kamikaze stuff on the Singapore streets, but got to Rubens and couldn't get past him. Then the safety car intervened again, because sure enough, Kamui had overdone it, gone into the wall at turn 18, and been collected by Bruno Senna's HRT. Once we got going again, I had Lewis chasing me, and we both had Virgin race cars in our way. When Lucas de Grassi and one of them held me up through turn 5, Lewis was all over me, but I held my line through turn 7. As the McLaren came across on me, I was doing my best to get away from it, but we touched, and Lewis was out on the spot. The stewards had a look and declared it was a racing incident, so I was free to carry on. My concern now was that my right front wheel was in a spot of bother. I had a huge vibration through it, and only the bead was keeping the tyre on the wheel rim, but we made it to the end. Fernando won in Singapore again, keeping Seb at bay, and for me 3rd place was a good salvage job. I now had 11 points in hand over Fernando, Lewis was 20 behind me, and Seb 21. Next stop, another favourite, Suzuka in Japan. This time I made the going tough for myself. Before the race, I went back to Australia, hopped on a mountain bike for the first time down under since my accident in Tasmania, and broke my right shoulder when I went straight over the handlebars in one of the slowest accidents imaginable. It was a skier's fracture, as they call it, and it meant I needed pain-killing injections over the course of the next weekend. Christian Horner later complained that he hadn't been told about my injury, but I honestly hadn't felt it was worth mentioning. I was certain it would have no effect on me in the cockpit, even though Suzuka is one of the most physically testing tracks we have to contend with. The other reason I didn't say anything was because I knew